This is CareShift with me, Safik Belakanti, and I'm excited about our guest today. Doug Nissenoff is the founder and managing partner of Intelligence Ventures, an early stage venture capital firm investing in the intersection of artificial intelligence and healthcare. Intelligence Ventures backs pre-seed and seed stage companies across biotech and pharma, medical devices, diagnostics, and healthcare software. Work closely with founders to turn early technical breakthroughs into category-defining companies. We dive into the power of proprietary data as the ultimate moat in healthcare, explore why early founder hunger often trumps experience and credentials, discuss how community and relationship building are at the core of venture success, and finally, we also go into what emerging fund managers should be focusing on when starting their firm and more. Doug, it's amazing to have you on here today. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me, Vic.
Yeah, I mean, we knew each other for such a long time. And, at least since the beginning of when we got to know each other, there's been so many changes that we've seen. And I kind of wanted to go straight into it. It seems to me that like every startup in healthcare right now has 10 other competitors kind of in the game. Like, are there any sectors that are underemphasized in the investing standpoint that you're looking into now or that you've seen?
Yeah, sure. And maybe it might be helpful to give a little bit of background about what we're up to and how the lens that we're looking through. So I am the general partner and founder of Intelligence Ventures. We're a venture capital firm investing in AI powered healthcare. We look at four buckets. It's biotech and pharma tools, medical devices, diagnostics, and healthcare software as a service. So I think that we typically look at it through that lens as we're considering, what is underemphasized, right? So I guess I'll go in the four buckets that we look at, right? So we'll start with biotech and pharma tools. We see a lot of plays right now in AI for drug discovery. Just about, I'd say one in every three of these pitches is in that realm, maybe something for clinical trial recruitment. But underemphasized, we're not seeing too many plays in the clinical manufacturing space, right? So discovering drugs, we have a lot of AI for. But actually making the drugs and automating those processes, which are some of the most expensive parts of the entire supply chain, still leaves much to be desired. And not a lot of people are touching that, mainly because it's expensive to get started. Medical device. So we see quite a bit. We've seen everything from robots doing brain surgery to insert anything that sounds like it came out of Black Mirror. We've probably been around it at some point. Diagnostics is becoming a hot scene, especially for artificial intelligence. What's overutilized right now is imaging, radiology kind of stuff because AI is just here now. But for medical devices and diagnostics, which are some of the buckets we're looking at here, we try to look at proprietary data sets and what's something that's being able to collect data. We're not, we're seeing a lot of space in oncology. We're not seeing too many things in the rare disease space. So that's something that could be emphasized more. And then lastly, healthcare SaaS. We're seeing a lot of people who are going head to head with Epic or Oracle Health, which are behemoths in the space. But really, anything that's underemphasized are where those companies are not looking or where they're not putting too much time and energy into their resources. That's ultimately what we're looking for because whoever can identify those spaces, they're not, that they're prime acquisition targets and billion, if not, so unicorn or decacorn status potential.
And in that specific case, do you think there's going to be a lot of kingmakers being formed in the next couple years, or is it going to be like a group of companies that are just going to be like the cloud, kind of like the Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, or is it going to be like one person has like 70% market share and then 10-20% for the rest? Like, do you think it's going to play out like that?
It just depends on which part of it. So I think there's green pastures for a lot of different companies to come out there. But ultimately, NA happens and, I still see Epic and Oracle Health being like from the healthcare SaaS standpoint anyway, really maintaining that footprint. But there's room for green pastures. I mean, if you think about like the LLM race in particular, yeah, it's gonna be pick one or two and they're gonna be, you know, the kings. Like, if you look at how ChatGPT was this time last year, they were on top of the world. Whereas this fast forward this year, Anthropic is definitely surpassing them. It's an arms race, and whoever will win remains unseen.
Yeah. And what was your kind of take on ChatGPT Health and Anthropic coming into healthcare? Like, what did that look like a plus or minus to you for startups?
I think it weeds out a lot of startups, but it still also highlights that room. There's still room for. I'll
Yeah.
give you an example. Like ChatGPT and Anthropic, neither of them are profitable businesses to date. So that's a problem. Number one. Number two, the proprietary nature of healthcare. Yes, they're partnering with these major institutions and launching ChatGPT Health, and I forget what Anthropic's version of it is I'm just going to call it quad health. They're doing a couple of things, but it's certainly not all encompassing. And they still haven't mastered certain data sets. Like that's what we're betting on at our fund is a lot of these startups who do come and apply. Well, they may have this niche data set that could be very attractive for acquisition from ChatGPT or for Quad for that exact reason.
So you guys are mostly betting a lot on the data moat as a big thing, or do you think there's a huge distribution, or like what do you think is the biggest moats coming into 2026 and on?
No, you nailed it. It's proprietary data. Think of it this way, right? There's so many of these startups that come out and they say the same things to us over and over again. They'll say, "Hey, we launched the LLM for I don't know, you name the disease of cancer, right?" Okay. And then the first question we typically ask them when they meet with my fund is, well, where are you getting this data that you're training your AI models on? You'll be surprised at how many of them are just using publicly available data sources. It's not really a problem in the beginning. Everyone has to start somewhere. And I think you start by scraping publicly available data sources. But over time, anyone can do that. So you really have to find a way, an unfair advantage. Whether that be your business model is partnering with institutions where every partnership leads to data sets that you're able to collect and train your models on. It could be you're developing a wearable device that's consistently collecting patient data. We've seen that type of thing. Like we've invested in two startups to date. Both of them are just happen to be diagnostics companies. One of them is Age Diagnostics. It's for NASH, which is a type of liver disease. Every time they do a test on a patient, it's another data set that only strengthens what they're able to do. Same thing with Heart IO, which is our second investment. If you think about EKGs, it's only a snapshot of your current cardiovascular health. This can essentially be predictive analytics for what the future holds, right? It can predict a stroke, a heart attack, which hold a lot of value. And that's that the reason these companies were able to be successful is they've found ways to collect data that's just an unfair advantage. And we don't foresee anyone coming in and dethroning them anytime soon.
And how does startup get that unfair advantage? You mentioned kind of, and I completely agree. Like you have to go kind of finding these kind of proprietary data models. Like, what do those partnerships look like that you've seen that work? Maybe for your two portfolio companies or others to kind of unlock those partnerships that other people may not be able to get.
Yeah. And it's really, healthcare is such a partnership driven industry and relationship driven. Ultimately, when we bet on a founder, we're betting on their ability to make that, right? One of the companies we're getting ready to invest in, the founder is actually the chief of anesthesiology at a premier VA hospital. And he has deep relationships and he's been with the VA system for decades. He knows exactly how to get something implemented into the VA system nationwide. Someone like that, it's an easier bet than, somebody fresh out of college. It's not that they can't do it, but if I were to guess who can get those relationships out there, it's probably the former, not the latter.
That makes a lot of sense in that kind of, and this kind of takes me back. Both of us have discussed like many times where like, I personally, I failed a lot, and I know you've had a lot of great experience yourself. Like, what is like one specific failure kind of point in your life that kind of fueled intelligence ventures pretty much?
We've had many. I always like to joke around that Intelligence Ventures is the failing upward story. I mean, look, I started this in February 2023. The backstory goes is I was working for a gene editing company that was publicly traded. And when the first patient dosed and had a serious adverse event, the company went under practically overnight. So I lost my job. Everybody lost their jobs. And in that moment, I said, I think one of the ways I can really be able to, I'd already been consulting for well over 25 startups in that point in my career. And I said, well, venture makes the most sense as the next step. Let's see if I can raise capital and then, invest in promising startups and help bridge that capital need that I'm seeing so much of. It- Doing so in February 2023 was probably one of the worst times in the past 10 to 15 years to raise a venture capital fund, let alone a first timer, you know? So the no shocker people were asking me, well, you look kind of young. How old are you? And my answer was, I'm old enough. I grew out a beard. It helped, right?
I can't believe like, how many times. I mean, if you're also from the founder space, especially where we're from, where like, oh, like why are you like, you're so young, you could be building something maybe in like another 10 years. What are you doing here? You don't like, I mean, assuming that also happens a lot in VC funds as well.
The challenge I always make is this. What are some of the most valuable companies in the world? Let's think about Facebook. How old was Mark Zuckerberg when he formed Facebook? What was he, 18, 19? Yeah, Google was formed by PhD students at Stanford, so they couldn't have been. They were in their early 20s, if I had to guess. If you look at, oh man, so many of them, right? So yeah, Elon Musk was making a lot of headway early on when he was in his like late 20s. So I don't think age matters, and if anything, there really is a benefit. I mean, number one, it gives you the opportunity. You're used to living more frugally.
Mm.
Sometimes people don't have, when they're that young, they don't have, a wife and kid or husband and kids to, that lean in on them and depend on them for a salary. So it's okay for them to take a haircut and not make a lot of money early on. They can take bigger risks that have a higher reward. And they're hungry. I mean, professors oftentimes are not great founders. That's not always the case. I've actually known some wonderful founders who are professors, but oftentimes it's a challenge. They're comfortable. They're tenured. They don't want to leave their comfortable day job, right? So hunger is the key driving factor. And I think that appetite goes down as people age.
And a lot of people don't realize though is that building a VC firm is like building a startup, right? And I wanted to know what were those biggest takeaways that you've had so far? I know you're in the beginning, like stages like intelligence ventures just started now. Like what are those biggest takeaways that you've had since the beginning that you wish you did sooner?
Well, it's all community building. This is very I talked about healthcare being a relationship driven business. Well, so is VC. I'd say that since I formed the fund, I've had well over 2,000 meetings in 2 years. And those are just the ones that I've kept track of. I'm sure there's more. Some of the thing, it is very much like a startup. I mean, you have to build a pitch deck. You have to come up with a thesis of why this will work. You have to understand your space and know your competition. You have to do your market research. You need financial models, right? We have our own version of a data room when an LP comes in and they're scouting us out. It's very similar in that capacity. Where it differs is number one, you're consistently in fundraising mode, and you raise one fund, you raise the money, you spend it, and then you go and raise more money and spend more money. It's a never-ending cycle. The other thing is that yes, you have to execute. You're really at the end of the day, you're betting on these companies, and you're not operating them. A lot of VCs who go from that as their whole career to an operator role find themselves struggling because sure, they sit on the board and give lots of directions and maybe advice, but they never had to fully live the consequences of their own advice, whether it be good or bad.
What will intelligence ventures look like in, 3, 5 years from now?
It's a good question. Well, we started small. Our first fund is only $1 million and writing 25 to 50K checks. A few things we did just to manage bandwidth and make this a reality. Number one, we only invest in US and Canada for now, strictly because I understand and speak FDA. I don't quite understand EMA or Chinese FDA or any other country. So we'll bring on experts as we grow into a fund number two. We'll definitely branch out into other countries and other geographical regions. Of course, we want to do bigger check sizes. Right now, we only do pre-seed and seed rounds because we write 25 and 50K checks. Ideally, we'll be doing probably like a $5 to $10 million fund for fund number two, doing like 250K checks. This is speculation, but to give you an idea of the growth. And that would allow us to go in Series A, maybe even go pro rata on some of our investments from fund number one into their Series A round, et cetera. And so one other thing we're actually really thinking about heavily is we have an eye on quantum computing. So that was something that I really was considering when it came to launch the fund in the first place. Spoke with a lot of founders in that space to come to the realization that it's still about maybe about 10 years away was the consensus, maybe 15. But for a VC fund, you have 10 years to return the capital. So I think it was too early for fund number one. But for I think fund number three will be about the time where I foresee it being the next wave, like after AI. Everyone will be talking about quantum.
Interesting. What about quantum gets you really excited? Like, what have you seen so far?
Well, what got me excited about AI is the exponential growth. I mean, I sat down at a coffee shop in December of 2022 with the idea and speculation that AI will transform healthcare. And then Moore's law states that computational power doubles every 2 years. And then, yeah, that held true. And I was pleasantly surprised 2 months after writing down a couple of slides that ChatGPT acquired 100 million users in just 2 months, the most in history, most rapid fire growth. We were onto something. And I'm watching this with quantum computing. The challenges are a few things. I mean, number one, it is extraordinarily expensive to get it up and running. It's kind of like a computer in the 1950s. Big, huge rooms that are cool and don't really work. It's not really scalable. But what we might be able to see is truly the way we're able to screen drugs or predict disease, the way that we're able to monitor healthcare. Everything will be exponentially faster. And things that used to take us years, if not decades, we might be able to use that computational power to cut it down to hours.
Do you think there's gonna be, like, another wave of, like, AI after in, like, 10 years when that's gonna be quantum computing, or is that going to be, like, something like, mobile or, like, cloud, like, where it's, like, it was disruptive, but not as much as AI? Like, what is your take? I know it's kinda early, but, like
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's fun to speculate on this one.
yeah.
Yeah. I think that quantum is just going to be more accessible the way that, going back to my example, computers in the 1950s took an entire room and now they look like this. They have a thumb and it does it. And it's the hope that quantum computing is able to accomplish something similar where it's accessible to everyone. And as you're seeing with AI, these tools are becoming accessible to everyone. And so people are just creating, how many people have you talked to recently who are vibe coding who don't know how to write a letter of code?
I'm one of them.
Exactly. So imagine what can happen if people can take these and apply these solutions to some of the world's biggest problems.
Going back to kinda like intelligence ventures, like, how do you guys separate what's non-consensus and right, and what is, I guess, non-consensus early and wrong? Like, how do you guys kind of separate those 2 things?
Oh boy. I mean, every company ap- applies for us and really blows up the AI piece. And a big part of that is our investment thesis is we invest in AI powered healthcare. Look, the proprietary data set is number one. So think about how much AI has evolved in just a year or two. Like an insane amount. We're not betting on the LLM race. That's a madman's game. At the end of the day, it's the same revolution in new skin. It's always been about data. If you think about, my goodness, the dot-com bubble. I mean, if you look at the companies that rose to prominence, what's the thing that they really, really became good at? Data. Google, Facebook, right? These guys are data mining experts. That's not going to change whether it's AI, quantum, or your simple websites.
Yeah, yeah, and that's true. I mean, what is the criteria that founders should be focusing on when pitching to investors in kind of 21st? I mean, we're hearing so much noise, and a lot of founders kind of are in the boat of like, I don't want to, waste my time with investors. I know I'm not going to get capital. Like, there's no point of just pitching to them where like they're just like pretending to listen to me. Like, there's like a bad kind of vibe going on, I can tell. What is your kind of take on how founders should be, proactively working with investors right now?
I think it's a matter of thinking differently about which investors to approach. I'll give you an example. Right now, because if you look at my LinkedIn, the way my profile is positioned, of course, I get so much inbound from investors. I get 20 to 30 deals where people apply for funding on our website. So these are only the ones who actually match our thesis. Can you imagine how many more creams that are applying, in my inbox, whatever you want to call them? One thing you could think about is we're pre-seed and seed stage investors, so we're often amongst the first to be investing. You don't necessarily need a VC on your cap table then, right? What's actually more compelling with VCs if you have key stakeholders on your cap table. So let's say it is AI for discovering oncology medicines. Having a cap table full of oncologists, to me, is a much louder signal than having um, a bunch of small VC names who don't have any domain expertise because they understand the problem, they get it. And not only that, these physicians can open doors that VCs might not be able to. So it really comes down to stop trying to please the investor, the VCs, but maybe more so figure out who your champions are going to be, and then see if you can get them to come in as an investor instead.
So, how has that worked out that you've seen in the past? Like, is that very relationship driven, or is it something that you can go and say, "Hey, Doctor X, can I pitch what I'm building after the first meeting?" Like, how has that been so far that you've seen?
I barely often even use the word pitch. I barely use the word sales, nothing like that. A
Yeah.
lot of the people who are investors in our fund, for example, are clinicians. The story I like to tell is the very first investor we got was someone who DM'd me on LinkedIn and said, "Hey, if you need help with diligence, let me know." And he sent me his resume. I had 0 investors on the cap table, so no, we couldn't really invest much. But I looked at the resume and realized he was a Harvard-trained plastic surgeon. And I called him immediately and said, "Okay, I feel like I should be asking you for a job, man." And he laughed and said, "Look, I work in the clinic. I plan on transitioning out. I just finished my MBA at a top tier business school, and my goal is to eventually go into the business side of it. But I want a front row view of investing in AI powered home. So I say, well, listen, would you be interested in investing alongside us and having a more active role? And that's exactly what happened. So it's not so much about pitching; it's more so listening to them, what drives them, and what energizes them. And you'd be amazed at how many people want a front seat row seat at innovation and just don't know how to get started.
And does that go with the same for founders kind of pitching to investors? Like, what does that strategy look like to get capital now?
I think for us, we invest in such an early stage. If you think about the story of Slack, the communications channel, this is one I like to tell all the time. They actually raised, I think it was like $17 million from Andreessen Horowitz to build a video game. That was the initial intent. And this is during COVID, or not COVID. This is like way before. This is like 2009, 2010, and no one worked remotely, but they all did. And so they built this communications channel because they needed a way to chat with each other while they were plugging away. And ultimately, they looked at each other after the video game was done. And they said, "Ooh, this is crap." So they went to their investor with their tail between their legs and said, "Okay, Bill, do you mind if we use our remaining capital to build this communication system?" And that was eventually acquired by Salesforce for $2 billion.
Yeah.
So if there's any lesson to be learned, if that deal came across my desk today, think about what their diligence process is. They probably sat there and looked at comps. They looked at video game comparisons. They did a deep dive market analysis, and none of that crap mattered. What mattered was the founder, and just do they have it in them to pivot? Are they intrinsically driven to be a shepherd of your capital? So what we're really looking at is the founder. Are they hungry? What progress have they had to date? Yes, we want a well thought out pitch. And of course, we're going to poke holes in it. And of course, you're going to have to pivot at some point. But what we want to know is a lot of these guys are so smart. Why are you doing this with such a low probability of success instead of just going to take a well-paying job? Why are you willing to chew through glass instead? Like that's what I'm trying to figure out when I speak to these founders.
What is your value add-on for intelligence ventures when you're like, okay, this is the deal we want to get. How can we get the most allocation possible? Like, what is your strategy of getting the founders to kind of choose you guys and on their cap table?
There's perks to being a smaller fund. Even if the round is closed, a 25 to 50K check, they don't really need to go to the board of directors to ask for us to come in. It's kind of like you know, okay, come on in. Sometimes we're the first check in and we actually do about a 20, on average, 15 to 20 page deal memo, deep dive on the companies. And if we invest in them, we say, look, please share this memo with other investors. We want you to succeed. I've met with I think the number is like 350 plus investors in 2 years. And so what I do is typically once we invest in the company, I announce to all my investor buddies and say, listen, do you want to come on in? What I've learned being in this, because I didn't know this going in, is once you invest in a company and other investors see you on the cap table alongside them, they get curious. Who are you? You know, they reach out. And I've gotten, since then, a lot of them say, hey, you have good taste. What else are you investing in? So the companies for we've only invested in two companies so far, but a lot of the people on those cap tables, they're actively saying, please send me more deals. So we're able to help out close out rounds pretty quickly. And we're even, we have a partnership with IO Associates, it's a recruiting firm here in Tampa, and they do healthcare IT, right? And so we help them build their team too. I've had one company say, hey, we need, our founder is very good, but he's technical and he's a physician full time. We need a CEO. Same day, called my recruiter, got on the phone. Recruiter started laughing. He's like, Doug, I've got 5 candidates for this guy. No problem. We'll get him working for equity only, not, let's get it happening.
Right.
So we're not a venture studio, but we do a lot of close stuff to it.
I was gonna say, like, you guys do very close things to like incubating a startup. I mean, that's pretty much what pre-seed investing almost is. Like, you're investing in a startup that has some traction, but like not that much, right? Like, how much traction can like a pre-seed company have until? I mean, all of these words are just like, words like seed. What is seed? Like, what is pre-seed? Like, but like having a little bit of traction, I guess, is the way to go, right? In 2026 and all, like you can't really pitch to investors and be like, I don't have that. Like we just started. Like, can we get capital?
Listen, everyone starts somewhere. What's more important is to show progress every single month and have, number one, have a mailing list to make sure that you get their consent. to add to your mailing list. Having a monthly update is always good. If not quarterly, you send out to investors. Hey, we've done this, this, and this. We were at these conferences. We're in the process of speaking to X amount of investors. We have soft commitment, whatever it is. Just show you're out there. There's a couple startups. I mean, there's one guy I know who's local to here in the Tampa Bay area. He has been at every single event I've gone to, and I go to a lot. And he got to, and I've had warm introductions from 5 other people who are like, "Hey, have you met this guy yet?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know him." But what the take home from me was, this guy is working his ass off. I see it,
Yeah.
and going back to how hungry are they? Well, this person's clearly hungry.
It's just like building a VC, it's like just like that, building a startup. What was your LP strategy from the beginning and how did that change over time?
Oh, it changed dramatically, dramatically. If you start a VC fund, especially when I did like in 23, first thing I did was I read a lot of books, Secrets to Sand Hill Road, VC investing and how to get in, From Zero to One, which is, I think is the Peter Thiel one. That's more on the startup perspective. All good books. But if you look at how it was done historically, they'd start much larger than we did. And the investor base that they recommended changed their mind about investing in emerging fund managers like myself. For example, some of them are like, well, you have to go after family offices and start with a $25 million fund. That works if you worked at Andreessen Horowitz and then decided to start your own one.
Yes.
Or if you're an exited founder who made a massive exit and then you could just bring some of the people who you made rich in. That doesn't work if you're really starting from the ground like I did. After learning, going back to that one physician who invested in us, it became clear that the people who understand it, who are invested, were the ones who just get the story, who literally are involved in it, like professors of artificial intelligence, executives in the biotech and pharma industry, clinicians, lawyers, even like medical device veterans, right? And these are the people who ended up coming in. And so I stopped trying to go after this elusive profiles of family offices, which they always crack me up. They're always like, they don't ever have their picture. They just say founding partner at blah blah capital since 1979. They have 2 connections because they've never used damn LinkedIn in their life. Those are the family office profiles you always see. Me and every other emerging manager was knocking on their door. It's not like that with clinicians. There's not so many of them who have VC funds asking if they want to come in. So when the opportunity presents itself to them, it's differentiated, it's different. And because I'm in Florida, which most people would think is works against me, has worked in my favor. There's quite a few players in the healthcare VC AI space in San Francisco, in Boston. But here, there's only one place in the Tampa Bay region to be involved in that. And when people see it, they get excited.
Absolutely. And what has been like those LP questions that they constantly ask, or what does that kind of look like? What are they looking for right now with their capital?
Yeah. The most typical questions we get are minimum investment, like what's the minimum check size? They ask us, well, how many deals are in your pipeline? Our answer is over 500. How are you sourcing deals? And are you worried about that? I laugh and show my LinkedIn inbox and tell them I actually need people to manage this because I'm inundated. About 25 to 50 messages per day. You know, not to include, that's not just LinkedIn. That's not even my emails. All the investors that I told you about, they refer deals to me. So deal flow is not an issue. They ask about the other LPs, and we actually have committee meetings with our LPs. And so I sometimes, if I feel like they are a good fit, I bring them in to be. And once they're in the room and they see who else is there, I mean, we have 15 LPs to date, and we have another 5 to 10 in the middle of onboarding. And they're all executive level, executive founders, you name it.
Yeah.
So I've been very blessed and fortunate that we built a fantastic LP base that speaks for itself. And so by the time they've seen the deals that we're reining in, by the time they see the LPs that are coming in, our minimum check size is 25K. And people can invest in their self-directed IRA too, So it's one of those things where that's usually enough for them to make a decision, but sometimes financial model could be the other thing that they want to see.
Right, right. So founder, market, product, and price. In these 4 buckets, can you rank what is the most important for a specific company in early stage?
Sure. So you said founder, market, product, and price, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Founder is number one. That's what I was saying earlier. Like, right?
yeah.
Like they're gonna be the ones who shepherd everything. Market's number two. Actually, I think you said it right in the right order. Founder, market, product, price.
Okay.
Like in that exact order. Because if the market's small, then what are you doing? Fantastic product, but it's a small market, then who cares? And
Yeah,
then,
right.
that too.
Well, What is I mean, you've seen so many data rooms, I'm assuming, and you've probably seen a lot of founders do bad jobs in data rooms. What is your concept on data rooms? Like, how should founders be managing them? Like, what should they be including? How does that look for founders?
Things that I like to see. I mean, yeah, you should have your pitch deck, any legal docs, the investment, if you're doing a SAFE or a convertible note, that should be in there. Financial models are good, like everything you're basing your assumptions on. Things that I like to see also are letters of intent. So if they have like a paying customer who's coming in and they claim that they have it, like show me. Like, okay, is that actually in there? Even if they don't have money in the bank, at least having someone write a piece of paper saying I'm interested shows me you can drive partnerships and sales to that far. So it's an early signal. I've seen a lot of research publications. If you have anything like data backing it or anything like that, then it's good too.
Yeah. I guess founders have like a lot of I guess a lot of the founders we tend to like overcomplicate exactly what needs to be done for investors. Each one is looking for something different. But in your case specifically, kind of going for intelligence ventures, how does what you saw or like what founders and LPs can describe intelligence ventures in 5 years? Like, how would that look like if everything goes right? Of course, like
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's just going to come down to who we end up investing in. So that's something we're gonna have to look at. Like, if we make some good early bets, then hopefully we're known for backing some real rock stars. That's every VC's hope. Beyond that, it's really just fast growth. I mean, it's my goal to exponentially grow the size of AUM for our firm. The LP base, I mean, we actually just landed our first institutional investor last week, which is awesome. And I hope that I think, and it's just normal to see any VC firm go from mostly angels to mostly institutional investors as time goes on. And that's based off of metrics, just the growth of the fund in general. Okay. So these are all things that we want to be able to be known for. I mean, in the board even knows this, but in the more fun way, like of course, we want to be the ones who helped our companies grow, more hands-on.
what have been the hardest challenges starting a VC firm from scratch?
Oh man, a lot of challenges. Really figuring out who your investors are. I was able to pretty quickly get a lot of deal flow. I think when you announce on LinkedIn that you're starting a VC fund, everyone, their mother comes running to you with their pitch deck. That wasn't so hard. The finding investors became hard. I mean, we ended up having to find our cadence, and for us, it really was growing out LinkedIn. When I started this fund, I was living in St. Augustine, which is like, you know, I w- there's no startup scene there. Like, I went into Chase Bank to start a business account, and they kicked me out because they didn't know how to categorize me. I was the first VC to ever walk in their door.
Crazy.
So getting prolific on LinkedIn helped. Because if you like that or essentially live on an airplane trying to go get LPs and stuff. So,
Right.
you know, getting a name for yourself and finding a reason for people to believe in you. And ultimately, what ended up happening is we had just enough capital to do our first investment, barely. We did it. We announced it. People got excited. It went from this guy's speculative about launching a fund to, hey, he's actually doing it. And so a lot of people sitting on the fence said, oh, okay, he's for real, and came on in. Uh, and then eventually, I was fortunate enough to have a good community of LPs where people felt it was no longer me proving myself. It really was just seeing if the fund is a good fit for them.
It's like a lot of founders come up to me and kind of ask how to kind of blow up on LinkedIn or social media. What is your advice for people, especially for founders who are trying to make it on LinkedIn, especially for potential clients or obviously for investors? Like, what does that look like? What is your tips and tricks there on increasing LinkedIn game?
Honestly, be as unconventional as possible. I have I tried a lot of things. I tried scientific research. No one understood what the hell I was saying, like at all. I tried thought leadership, and my friends were making so much fun of me. They were like, "You are so freaking tacky. Don't stop doing that." There was one day where I had a glass of wine, maybe two, and then what I ended up doing is posting on LinkedIn, like a little blog where I was making fun of VC. I was just outright ripping them apart, and it had memes. It was not professional by any stance, but people liked it. It actually blew up, and I woke up the next day to like 500 people plus adding me on LinkedIn, and that was like the first thing that went viral. The other thing that went viral, stupidest, the most popular post. I post like 3 to 5 times a week because that's just how you get the algorithm going. The most popular post of all time. I did announcement, like, you know how people announce their new jobs?
Yeah,
I did. I announced it. I said, I'm proud to announce absolutely nothing.
I remember that. Yeah.
That I had 2,000 new followers in one day, and the funny part about it, Vic, was I actually got investors out of it. People looked at my profile, laughed, and said, "Oh, wait, he's doing cool things," and then reached out to me for a serious LP meeting.
Oh my god,
I
isn't that the post that got banned on LinkedIn as well? Or is that
I forgot about that one. Yeah. No, I did a fake job posting.
that's right.
Yeah, looking for a rich uncle. Just give me money while I go play all day.
Oh,
And LinkedIn was like, "That's not a real job." And so I took a screenshot of LinkedIn saying that's not a real job, and that went viral.
the definition of unconventional is like, ooh, oh
Yeah.
my god. So I mean, it works. What works, it works. And now it's kind of like, and now you're kind of sticking it to LinkedIn. You kind of changed it up a little bit now, where you're kind of getting, I guess I would say, more friendlier. Where you're kind of saying, oh, these intro weeks, or like introing people, or you know, calling out your friends to for jobs that they're looking for. Like, why did you start getting into that on LinkedIn?
You know, it was one of those things where I tried it for a friend, and I had, like, 10 or f like, they were looking for a job, and they were stressed, and I said, "You know, I have 18,000 followers. Let me see what I can do for you." And I posted, and I had, like, 10 to 15 people say, "Can you introduce me to this person?" And
Well,
he got a job out of it.
that's
And, like, that was just the most gratifying feeling. So I can help people, I will. Like, it's so low friction and easy to do, and also it really comes down to community building. That's been the number one thing. Intelligence Ventures, it started as a VC fund and turned into a community building experiment. We have a solid community of LPs and of startups and a lot of supporting people. That's a big part of networking too. It's like customer service, right? You go in there with the "how can I help you" mindset. That was something I learned when I was in consulting and stuck with me.
recently on LinkedIn, you did like I guess I would say a mass campaign, and maybe you can explain this for people who don't know. But you kind of wanted to raise till $1 million for your VC fund by a set date. Like, how did that experience work for you? Any key learnings from that?
Yeah, that was a so there was a point where we were stuck, hit a lull in raising capital, and we didn't really have many LP leads in the hopper. And so I kind of threw a Hail Mary and I said, it was like, "Hey, we're closing by December 15th. Either you're in or you're out," kind of thing, whatever happens. And that post went blew up and people loved it. They were saying, "Wow, ballsy. I'm watching."
That was ballsy.
Yeah, and my heart was pounding on my chest when I posted that one, and I was like, "Oh god, what am I getting myself into?" But to my surprise, I got in 2 weeks, 20 LP meetings out of that one post. And, like, they really did just message me and say, "Hey, I'm interested," right? So, now that's the happy part of it. The downside is I did this 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, and between Thanksgiving and mid-January, nothing happens. The world closes for holiday season. We raised a little bit of capital, and we actually did got a few LPs who ended up coming in later, but not until January, or if not February, coming like they're onboarding as we speak. You need more than 2 weeks to get somebody invested in a fund, but ultimately it did its trick, which is got me quite a few good leads.
Amazing. Now, going into healthcare specifically, from your perspective, what parts of healthcare are ready now for venture scale disruption? And what areas are kind of looking exciting right now and that are kind of really crowded but not really that fundable?
I'll start with the AI. I guess we can always just do the AI race, right? I'd say that a lot of medical device and diagnostics is good for now. It's mostly an M&A run space, and that's something where it's easier to look at pitch book, look at comparables and be like, okay, this has happened historically. I could also tell you where the challenge is. Like biotech and pharma tools is a harder one. I come from the biotech world, but what we found is a lot of these companies will say, "Hey, look, we have this AI for drug discovery. Specify or we specialize in, I don't know, for this exercise, we'll say oligonucleotides." And then they'll say something like, "Hey, we also have partnerships with Flagship Pioneering and Johnson and Johnson." Sounds promising, right? But then you look at the data room. Those contracts are only $25,000 and they're not ready. That's not ready for venture scale. And that's a challenge that we've been running into in this space, right? Because unlike medical device and diagnostics, where you can look at historical trends for you don't see that it's too new. Drugs discovered by AI, there aren't any FDA approved drugs that exist yet. And it's not, and that's just because it takes about 8 to 10 years on average and $2 billion to get a drug approved through the FDA and commercialized. So today's snapshot, like what's the most advanced, I think is like phase 2, maybe phase 3 drugs. That's actually a snapshot of AI 5 or 6 years ago,
Mm.
not now.
Yeah.
So we don't what the state is now, nobody knows, which is why it's really hard to tell and speculate.
And what is your best advice for founders kind of navigating or looking to sell to clinics, health systems, or payers? Like, how do you kind of tell them how to do it, what to do specifically?
Yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah.
Really comes down to establishing relationships with healthcare systems. Smart ways to do it could be finding early advisors for your company who are already working and are key decision makers in these healthcare systems. They can then become a champion internally for you. That's one way to do it. You know, one of our portfolio companies, they have a guy he used to be the CEO of a hospital system. And he now just does that for consulting kind of thing, right? So he understands exactly the decisions that are made and who the stakeholders are. Cold outreach isn't impossible. I mean, you can always get a sales force out there. Just be smart with it. Don't spend too much. Try regional hubs and then kind of grow slowly or grow accordingly, not slowly.
You explained your thesis, and it's kind of broken up into 4 categories. What is your current portfolio strategy that you tell LPs and, like, that you rethink all the time for intelligence ventures right now?
Yeah. Right now, we have 520 startups that have applied for funding. The way that we divide and conquer is I have a team. We have 2 venture partners, a principal and an associate, as well as 2 analysts on the team. So they usually take the intro calls, right? As long as they fit our thesis, so it's pre-seed or seed, US or Canada based. Okay, well, and it's AI as a core component of the tech stack, and we'll look at it. So from there, if it goes well, they meet with myself. That goes well. We go through the data room, due diligence memo. They meet with our LP committee, and then we make the decision. Because it took us a while to raise funding, we're actually a little advanced right now in how many deals are ready to go, essentially. So right now, we're reviewing 4 deals per month. That we're putting in front of the LP committee. So, and we can invest in all 4 if we think it's with are convicted to do so. I guess with strategy, it really just comes down to what's going through the pipeline at that moment. You know, we've done medical devices and diagnostics first. We're actively looking for biotech and pharma tools that can satisfy that itch and scratch that itch. Same with healthcare SaaS. We're in the process of investing in a company. We actually just made a commitment yesterday, and so we're going to be when that's disclosed, I'll share more with you guys. But we're trying to do 1 check per month.
Wow, that's a lot of deals. 1 check per month. Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah. Listen, it's 2 years of backlog of companies who have been applying for funding and us saying, "Well, we're still raising ourselves, hold on."
Yeah, true.
But we're at the point where we can finally do it.
Right. What, help have you given so far, if any, and maybe it's gonna be taking a while for your current portfolio companies? Like, what has that looked like so far, that strategic partnership?
Right now, it's mostly on the fundraising front, and making strategic introductions. I mean, one of our portfolio companies is getting ready for an extension round, so, um, I literally sat down with the founder, opened up my meeting tracker, shared my screen, and said, "Let's walk through this line item by line item, and I'm gonna reach out to every one of them. If we don't have money raised by the end of this, we're gonna sit down, we're gonna do this again until we find you one."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, so it's the early stages,
Yeah.
so and then
Yeah.
there's the other company that needs a founder, that company, they're not published on our website or anything like that yet. It's not a founder, it's even a
Yeah.
CEO, so we're in the process of recruiting a CEO for them.
Interesting. And you've had your time, kind of working in university, kind of incubating startups and working with college students. What was like the biggest kind of opportunity that you've seen there, and like challenges that you've seen in that role as well?
That was an interesting one. I mean, working, with startups out of the university setting, the pros and the cons. I mean, the pros are that they typically have good defensive moats from an intellectual property standpoint. If it's university-owned IP, that means they've patented things. And the challenges are recruiting is building the right team. I think I may have mentioned earlier, are not always the best founders, and it's not. Sometimes they are, but they're oftentimes just comfortable. Grad students happen to be pretty good founders, as it turns out, because they still have that hunger factor to it. So there's that aspect of you'll see a lot of professors come out and say, "Hey, I want to start a business," and then you say, "Oh, are you going to quit your job?" And they say, "No."
Yeah.
That's fair. It's okay. Don't blame them. Sometimes they have wife and kids. They shouldn't quit their job, but sometimes they really just don't do anything with the business, and it just stalls for a long time, and that's not good.
Right.
So,
Right.
and then yeah, I'll start there. I think those are some of the points I wanted to drive home.
Yeah. And kind of quick rapid fire here. So, what is the biggest pet peeve for you in venture right now?
I think throwing around certain credentials that are just so cliche. Forbes 30 under 30. I was backed by X investor, so our valuation is $1 billion now. Just find a good founder. I really don't care your credentials. Don't tell me you went to Harvard or Stanford. I don't care. Like, are you going to solve a problem?
Exactly. And what should investors be doing right now that they're lacking or like that you're seeing also is kind of not the best direction to take?
Taking risk. I'm sure you're feeling this as a founder, right? A
Yeah.
lot of them say that they take risk and then their risk profiles significantly died. And it's not the same industry that it was 20 years ago. And it's now getting closer to private equity than it was true venture capital. I mean, it's a subsector of private equity, but like more in the traditional sense, you know?
Yeah. What excites you most in your kind of future of intelligence venture? And like also speaking of founders, what excites you a lot?
Honestly, when just they find a great problem. Um, it's something that's proprietary. For example, when we first invested in age diagnostics, NASH. I mean, when I worked my job in investor relations in New York. I got so many equity research reports from like J.P. Morgan and Morgan Stanley saying that NASH was this multi-billion-dollar market. And whoever figured it out, it's going to be a wealthy company. Lo and behold, a couple years later, Madrigal Pharmaceuticals approved the first FDA drug for um, Nash, what's called MASH now with an M. And that's a multi-billion-dollar company. They were right. Seeing a founder, but diagnosing NASH or MASH is still a challenge because you can only do it through imaging or through a liver biopsy. So seeing somebody who came out of the blood draw that uses AI to really nip it in the bud, that was exciting. It was cool to see these theses just align with what I've been reading and how I've been researching.
How has family life related to your venture life?
It's a hard challenge. I mean, you need to really be aligned with your family. I mean, with my wife, and there are hard rules. I mean, typically around 5 o'clock, I put the phone down. I don't really check emails and, try to be with my family until my son goes down to bed. And then I'll go to the gym and then back at it 9 or 10 o'clock at night, whatever it might be. It's harder to travel. I'd rather be there with my family than going to San Francisco. That's something that's just obviously true. And I've had to, I mean, even take consulting arrangements, whatever it might be, to make sure to pay the bills and support for my family. Because when you start with a small fund, the economics don't really line up, especially when it comes to a growing family. And so these are things where if you're starting a business, you really need to be aligned with your family members to make sure it's a success. Otherwise, you're going to have problems.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's 100%. Final question. What is your take on Florida as a tech ecosystem? Is it growing? Is it stalling? Where's Florida right now in the national race compared to like SF, New York, Austin? Where's that at?
Growing. And for life sciences, it's still not quite there. It's growing big time for like, if you look at Miami for fintech, if you look at life sciences, it's spread out all over the state of Florida. There's great universities spitting out IP. There are lots of wealthy people here. And one fun fact that a lot of people have a hard time understanding is, well, they say, well, all the VC money is in SF or Boston. That's true. But also the second highest concentration of family offices in the country is here in Florida. And so high net worth individuals are actually not that hard to find. Just look around. Just go to certain cities, anywhere from Naples to Sarasota or Palm Beach. You know, like there's a lot of money there. So it's definitely growing, and there's a lot of those resources. But it takes a community to kind of be able to build that type of stuff. And we're definitely, I don't know if we'll ever be at the point of being a Boston or SF, but it's definitely its own hub with great features.
Yeah. Yeah, Doug, it's amazing to have you on the show, and I enjoyed it so much. Truly, it was such a fun time. So, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, Vic. It really was a pleasure.